A federal judge in New York has unsealed the identities of about 170 associates of Jeffrey Epstein. The first batch of docs was unsealed Wednesday evening. Additional documents naming more of Epstein's associates will be published on Thursday, today. For quite a while, various influencers have been hyping the release of the documents. It became sort of a meme. So people were asking, where is Epstein's client list? Why is the government going after Trump or whatever when Epstein's client list has not been revealed? Or Epstein's client list will bring the system down. As if there was a definitive list out there of people that can be assumed guilty of actual crimes. Over the years, we got quite a lot of information about his associates, his contacts. That was always just a starting place for further investigations. It took a lot of effort to figure out what Prince Andrew, for example, did or didn't do. These things happened a long time ago. So professionals should be handling this sort of thing. Epstein wanted to be involved with anybody. He even tried to get close to Elon Musk's brother. According to the available information, Epstein was never using advanced techniques. He hid his money in offshore financial vehicles, he used it as bait to get close to people, and he had access to adult and underage girls. Now, all kinds of individuals and organizations can work like this. And targeted people are not necessarily so stupid as to walk into a primitive trap and be involved with a minor in one of Epstein's homes. Flying in Epstein's plane or being on his island or his other homes is interesting, but not evidence of criminal activity. It was legal for people to have orgies with adult women. And powerful guests didn't need Epstein to get girls, obviously. There's a whole legal ecosystem to serve rich people who are usually very busy and don't have the time or patience for relationships or extended affairs. And you saw people posting all kinds of nonsense on the web, claiming an association with Epstein is equal to illegal activities with underage girls. Or people were named as associates who apparently never had anything to do with Epstein at all. If amateurs start a witch hunt, they may find themselves in a position like Alex Jones getting sued for crazy amounts of money. Journalists have been able to figure out the identities of many does even before they were officially unsealed. Many of them are victims and people marginally involved, so it's not a bombshell client list. Bill Clinton is named a lot in the documents. In a deposition, a victim of the pedophiles that Epstein told her that Clinton liked girls young. Nothing conclusive. My trust level with Clinton is obviously zero, but there is nothing in the documents that is, truly serious and standalone information. So you would have to actually do a lot of additional research and try to find out what he was really doing. Then, a real journalist brought down Epstein, Julie K. Brown. Not the truthers, who were sometimes paying amateurs, employees, $100,000 per year to create viral nonsense. Some of these influencers, they made millions and millions of dollars each year. And they would draft these young people straight from college or people who just had a few, months or years experience in sports broadcasting, hiring them, starting them out with like $50,000, $60,000 a year, and then moving them up until they made close to $100,000 a year plus performance bonuses. So this is the kind of money that's being tossed around for amateurs. Now, you could imagine what could have been achieved by professional, independent platforms with enough money, to find these real journalists like Julie K. Brown, give them a real good salary, performance bonuses, and pay for all the expenses, and create sensations. I mean, this was doable, right? We know from Julie K. Brown's book that she wasn't making a lot of money. She always struggled to pay for things, and she couldn't even keep track of all the expenses on her many trips. So she would forget to keep some of the receipts, and then she would get chewed out by her superiors. And at the end of the investigation, she was paying out of her own pocket for bagels in the office to celebrate the story. and she wasn't even sure she could afford those bagels. And then story came out, and she didn't even know if this was going to create an impact. Fortunately, it did. But you can imagine if an real independent platform had hired her, and she would have done the exact same investigation. This would have been promoted like it's the most important story. And this would have had a huge impact. And this independent media platform company, whatever, they could have had a global effect, not just with the case, but also the PR for themselves. Just to show the world that they did a better job than, let's say, the New York Times or the Wall Street Journal or whatever other papers are out there, or the Miami Herald. Okay, so Julie K. Brown had to do a lot of baseline crime stories, true crime stories over the years, just going to the prisons and looking up government files, indictments, figuring out who these people were. Oftentimes the names are not in the documents themselves, but you can just ask around. So she couldn't do the stories she wanted to do. And at some point after this Weinstein thing, she convinced her editor to make sort of a Me Too story. That's how she pitched it, and the editor agreed to it, didn't probably understand what this could lead to, and she was off in doing the research. So it was a real journalist, not the truthers. The truthers, they act like they brought down Jeffrey Epstein, but they really didn't. They just commented over the years on stories made by real journalists. Then, according to testimony from Epstein's former household staff, Alan Dershowitz visited Epstein's Florida home very often, allegedly going there by himself and spending time in the presence of young girls. He maintains complete innocence. Now the documents really don't tell us that much. Jeffrey Epstein had information on Donald Trump, supposedly, and the Clintons, so incendiary it could have upended the 2016 presidential election if made public, according to the dead financier's younger brother. If I said what I know about both candidates, they'd have to cancel the election. That's what Jeffrey told me in 2016. That's what Mark Epstein told the Post, recalling a conversation he had with his brother about the showdown between Trump and Hillary Clinton. So lots of interesting hearsay, but nothing really conclusive. The property developer, Mark Epstein, demurred when pushed to elaborate, saying his brother never revealed to him exactly what he knew about the then presidential hopefuls. Trump flew on Epstein's private jet 7 times in the 90s, according to flight logs, jetting between Palm Beach, Florida, and New York. Ghislaine Maxwell, co-conspirator in the sex ring who's now jailed in Florida, allegedly claimed Epstein had videotapes showing Trump and Clinton in compromising positions with women. Nothing specific, nothing really concrete. So here's a quote. "If you get the tapes on Trump, you have to do Clinton," Maxwell said during a 2016 interview. Former 60 Minutes producer Ira Rosen alleged in his book called Ticking Clock Behind the Scenes at 60 Minutes. So it's hearsay. This person supposedly spoke to that person who supposedly heard somebody else saying something, or maybe he saw something. It's not really open and shut, this type of stuff. So what was going on? Were these adult girls? Nobody would care much. MAGA influencers quickly lost interest in the documents after all this hype. The focus is now on materials seized at Epstein's home, videotapes, but it's unclear what's on them. It may be legal orgies or just talk. Some real crazy stuff, and backup files may have been hidden by Epstein and associates as insurance policy. So if tapes, don't show illegal activity of somebody else at Epstein's place, then it cannot be made public. So this is not a conspiracy that this stuff is not being made public. Or parts of it could be, could be looked at in the course of investigation. So you can't make that public before the investigation has progressed or even has concluded. And then, of course, there's all this intelligence stuff. So somebody who visited Epstein may have had something to do with intelligence. So these people are protected in many ways. So it's really complicated. Some of these materials were stolen by a defector cop, John Mark Dugan, the Palm Beach County deputy sheriff who had access to 400 plus Jeffrey Epstein tapes. The author Craig Unger of the book American Compromat traveled to Moscow to find Dugin. It's about digitized videos of over 400 sex acts that were supposedly taped on Epstein's premises. It's grainy old crap quality, not necessarily bombshell material. Again, if adults are having fun with adults, that's, meaningless in terms of criminal investigations. The speculation is that Dugin sold footage to Russians. Again, Epstein never used advanced techniques as far as we can tell. Baiting people with money, investments, inviting them, it's normal stuff. He didn't use male butlers, apparently, but young girls were answering phones and doing this kind of work. So the guests would get served coffee or booze by young girls. But the guests are not stupid. They would not walk into the most primitive, silly trap imaginable. It's ludicrous to believe Epstein was a highly successful mastermind, controlling all these different people. All kinds of groups use these techniques and even much better techniques. If Epstein started this thing a long time ago, the government would have noticed very quickly. And he was once drafted by the Barr family. The older Donald Barr, the OSS officer whose son William became United States Attorney General. So he was attached to government people. He was in circles that lead back to Roy Cohn, whose father was a leftist. But Cohn was handling cases of atomic espionage against the communist Rosenbergs and things of that nature. And it is alleged that he was involved in serious counterintelligence operations to compromise suspected communists during the Cold War. Cohn was tied to Donald Trump as a sort of a mentor, so the government apparently tried to bait girls to catch communists, but these operations are inherently dangerous because all kinds of people can end up sort of into a trap, not necessarily with minors, but moles inside the government can hand this intel over to the Russians. So there's a lot we don't know. We know from Craig Unger's book, American Compromat, the Russians tried to infiltrate the network of Epstein and Brunel, the French guy who also died in a prison cell under mysterious circumstances. To this day, we don't know ultimately what the hierarchy was exactly. How much was Epstein doing on his own? What intel agencies he was attached to? The FBI kind of named him as a source. Sigal Mandelker from the Trump administration viewed him as a source. And he bragged about CIA connections. So the likelihood is significant that he was used in that way. He intentionally got himself a reputation so he could talk business with shady people from all over the world, gaining intel. And that may explain why he got off so easily the first time he was a target of investigation. Most charges were dropped and he got convicted of a smaller charge, I think soliciting prostitution or something. He didn't have to spend real prison time, and then he continued his work. And the conviction even bolstered his profile as a shady guy who stays loyal to his associates and who denies practically everything. So that may be the whole secret, the whole big secret. He was recruited by the bars, he handled money he didn't really own to bolster his image, and he just became a source. He was tied to people who dealt with oligarchs from the former Soviet Union, and that's an entryway to gain intel. But he was strangely unprofessional when it came to his own private entertainment. He was soliciting, or he was recruiting so many underage girls. It had to be a constant stream of girls, and that leaves traces, and that's really unprofessional. So, as the old saying goes, don't get high on your own supply, or monkeys don't sell bananas. He wasn't really separating business from his private entertainment, and so not professional at all. Ghislaine Maxwell's father, Robert Maxwell, was initially attached to British intelligence, then very likely Israeli. They surely celebrated him at his funeral, but there was also suspicion he was KGB, so we don't really know. Whitney Webb's books contained interesting tidbits about mafia guys attached to intelligence agencies, but someone else did the research for the book, apparently. And there is unconfirmed bogus stuff in there, such as the allegations against FBI Director Hoover that the mafia controlled him with gay cross-dressing pictures. So in Webb's book, it seems like Jewish mafia types linked to Israeli intelligence were taking over the US government, but that's nonsense. There are operations, there's some overlap, but don't get confused. Some readers may think this is the Elders of Zion conspiracy, which is also nonsense. British intelligence fabricated the Jewish conspiracy myth in the early 1800s to destabilize France and later Germany and Austria. British/aristocratic intelligence had recruited the Rothschilds to perform basic tasks. But the fake mythology tells us that these tiny Jewish families took over Britain with the most simple techniques, like a courier system. It's ridiculous. Conspiracy buffs think that only Jews and Freemasons in the past had real intelligence capabilities and everyone else was just stupid. And of course, they think Freemasonry is Jewish, so only Jews had intelligence capabilities. In the same style, you get the impression Epstein and mafia types and the Israeli Mossad took over all kinds of institutions in the US by using these old, basic, tired techniques using girls. Even in past centuries, all kinds of countries had vast intelligence networks. Not officially like in later times, but it was very sophisticated, very large. Historians just never properly reconstructed all that, and neither did the conspiracy authors. There are super large networks of the past, completely unknown to conspiracy influencers. So I suggest you get my ebook about old intelligence networks in Enlightenment and Communism. You find the link in the description below. In reality, US intel sometimes subcontracted mafia types to handle certain tasks. It makes no sense to use full-fledged trained agents to work in all kinds of places in the underworld, hoping to gain bits of intel. You outsource tasks to organized crime, but it's clear that the government is in control, not the mafia types. So there are many stories of the Prohibition time when, organized crime ran the booze, and they had all these different illegal bars selling booze to people, and so it was just not feasible and possible to have trained intelligence people run all these bars and check out on everybody and spy and just surveil the underworld in the hopes of catching some real intelligence. So this had to be outsourced many times. So one could spend years on a case like Jeffrey Epstein and still not find the end of it. So if you read Julie K. Brown's book, that will take you about 10 hours. You read other books, it will take you 10 hours each probably. And then there's so much context you have to know about concerning organized crime, the intelligence world, different countries and agencies that may have been involved. If you lack all this background, you are a target for manipulation. So besides the obvious distortion by the MAGA crowd that this was simply a leftist conspiracy or the truthers is boring, it's the Jews' interpretation, you can tell how Russian propaganda tries to amplify the case while being completely silent about the massive human trafficking inside Russia. All over the country, slimy individuals are recruiting young girls from poor families for beauty pageants and model agencies so they can be further screened and delivered to rich customers. The system is on a grand scale and runs on mafia and KGB rules. By omitting this reality, influencers can create the false impression that the West is a hopeless mess while Putin's regime is the current moral leader and potential savior of the world. Then, of course, as I mentioned, Epstein was using the most baseline techniques. So he was inviting a lot of smart people, and they would not necessarily walk into the most simple trap. Just handing over their life practically to Mr. Epstein, which makes no sense because, if this is all being recorded, then Epstein would control you forever. Now, not very hard to figure that out. And also, if somebody refuses to conform to Epstein's wishes later on, what would Epstein do? Leak this stuff to the press, so the whole game is up, and all these investigations start into Epstein, and the whole method is compromised. This is not really feasible. So oftentimes, these rings providing girls, this is just to please powerful people. It's not so much compromat, trying to blackmail everyone. It's more like if you're in certain circles, you get access to this entertainment and no questions asked because these people are busy. Powerful people are expected to work a lot. Just to really show their loyalty to the broader, network, be really busy, but they also have to be kept entertained. Because there's no entertainment, and no protection for, say, illegal entertainment, with maybe underage girls or drugs or whatever. If there's no protection and no fun, why would these people work that much? They would reduce their workload, or they would find other ways to make money, or they would defect maybe to the Russians or the Chinese or somebody else. Somebody else who is providing entertainment. Now, this is also a huge issue in Russia. Also a huge issue in China, and there's so much documentation on it, and you can find studies and investigative reports how the Chinese communists, they have to please their officials because they are expected to work hard. And so this is not what leftists think of communism, where everybody is equal and all that nonsense, but this is a classic empire, China. So these are classic rules. You got to have your officials, and you have to keep them happy. And it's also something that needs to be made clear to these officials. If you stay loyal, if you stay in the game, you keep access to the fun. But if you drop out, if you reduce your workload, you lose the protection, you lose the access, and you have to make do with lesser forms of entertainment, and you don't get the protection. So if you get caught, it's on you. So then of course Epstein was defeated by real journalists, not truthers, and there are no elders of Zion. The conspiracy buffs always imagine they can solve any case in 5 seconds. It's the Jews, and Epstein was Jewish, so case closed. The whole background story that people are told that the whole thing is false. Amschelmeyer Rothschild did not steal from the Landgraf of Hessen-Kassel. Nathan Rothschild did not scam the London Stock Exchange after the Battle of Waterloo. The family worked for British aristocratic intelligence. And conventional conspiracy mythology was run by the same intelligence circles to destabilize France, Germany, and Austria. So to really make these larger investigations in, going back into the past, this needs to be handled by professionals. Now I have 20 years of experience, and I've done my own very original research, and I'm aware of the best other research that's out there. This is sort of the minimum you need to expect from an influencer. That this person has read, let's say, 500 to 700 or up to 1,000 of the best books available on the empires and the intelligence agencies. Now, of course, for a lesser academic degree, you can get away with 150 books on a topic, or sometimes you need 300 books. And you want to be a professor, you have to have read like 500 books on a certain subject or field. And of course, you need to expect that from an influencer, or you expect more from an influencer. It does get complicated, and the audience doesn't have the time to do all this. So you need media which does the job for you, and this is what we are. I have so much training in this, and I have so much experience with this, this is how you progress in a case. This is how you work your way forward. And so, we're going to see what other documents are being released in the course of the day. Maybe give you an update. I've done quite a bit of material on the Epstein case, and there's a lot of misinformation out there. There's a lot of completely false information out there, so you need to be aware of that. There's no magic bullet coming. There's no silver platter, with the client list coming, so you can just, save America with it. That's surely not going to happen. So check out my book on old intelligence networks that still persist to this day. Link is in the description below. Like this video, comment on it, share it, and subscribe to this channel.